The 22nd of June, 1941. Under the code name Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union, its ally in the war against Poland. Among the first territories to be occupied by Nazi forces is Latvia, one of the 3 Baltic states that Stalin brutally annexed in the summer of 1940. By the time of the German invasion, 5% of Latvia's almost 2 million population is Jewish, and the Nazis, assisted by local collaborators, quickly implement their plan to exterminate the Jewish community. They deprive Jews of their basic human rights, forcing them into ghettos where they face extreme overcrowding, severe food shortages, and starvation. In the weeks that follow, Jews are beaten, tortured, and subjected to mass executions by the Nazis, who force their victims to undress before being shot and buried in mass graves. By the time Latvia is liberated by the Red Army in the summer of 1944, approximately 3/4 of the Jewish population is wiped out. One of the main perpetrators responsible for these atrocities is Herberts Cukurs. Herberts Cukurs was born on the 17th of May 1900 in Liepāja, then part of the Russian Empire. His father, a locksmith, later owned a mechanical workshop where the young Cukurs developed his skills in mechanics. In his youth, Cukurs was deeply involved in the struggle for Latvia's independence and held strong nationalist views. By 1919, he had joined Latvian aviation, but his military career was cut short in 1926 when he was dismissed with the rank of senior lieutenant for involvement in terrorist activities. However, Cukurs' passion for aviation did not end there. In the same year, he began constructing aircraft on his own. Between 1926 and 1934, he developed and built a glider and 3 airplanes. One notable creation was the C-3, powered by an 80-horsepower engine that he ingeniously assembled from 2 1916 Renault engines. In August 1933, Cukurs embarked on a daring flight to Gambia, and after a long journey across Africa, he returned to Latvia in May 1934, where he was hailed as a national hero. His fame grew further when he published a diary titled My Flight to Gambia, showcasing his writing skills. In 1937, he completed a flight to Asia, and 2 years later, after returning from a journey to Palestine, he shared his experiences of the sights, sounds, and smells of Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Bethlehem. He was often seen discussing these experiences and other topics with Jewish intellectuals in Riga's cafes. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. After the Soviet occupation of Latvia in 1940, Herberts Cukurs was summoned to Moscow. The Soviets sought to recruit him for his aviation expertise, hoping he would help build planes for the Soviet Union. However, the geopolitical landscape was rapidly shifting. Just a year later, on Sunday the 22nd of June 1941, under the code name Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. This invasion dramatically altered the fate of many communities under Soviet control, including the Jews of Latvia. Before the Second World War, the Jewish community in Latvia was vibrant and culturally rich, playing a significant role in the country's economy, education, and social life. Jews had lived in Latvia for centuries, and by the late 1930s, their population had grown to about 95,000, making up roughly 5% of the total population. This community was diverse, with active participation in various political movements, including Zionism, socialism, and religious traditionalism. Jewish schools, newspapers, and theaters flourished, particularly in Riga, the capital, which was a major center of Jewish learning and culture. However, despite their significant contributions, Jews in Latvia faced growing anti-Semitism, particularly during the 1930s, reflecting broader European trends. The rise of authoritarian regimes in Europe further heightened these tensions. The situation deteriorated dramatically after the Soviet Union occupied Latvia in June 1940. The Soviet regime quickly suppressed Jewish institutions, nationalized businesses, and arrested or deported many Jewish leaders and intellectuals. In July 1941, immediately after the capture of Riga by German forces, Cukurs became the deputy commander of the newly formed Latvian auxiliary police unit, the Arajs Kommando. Led by Viktors Arajs, the Arajs Kommando swiftly became one of the most feared units in Nazi-occupied Latvia. Composed largely of Latvian volunteers, this unit played a crucial role in the Holocaust. During the Nazi occupation, the commando was responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of innocent Jews. Their brutal efficiency made them a key instrument in the Nazi regime's plan to eradicate the Jewish population in Latvia. Cukurs was deeply involved in numerous horrific acts against the Jewish population. Eyewitnesses report that he took part in the destruction of Riga's synagogues, forcibly removing Jews from their homes, confining them in the synagogue on Stabu Street, and then setting the building ablaze to burn those inside alive. As the people who were trapped inside attempted to escape through the windows, Cukurs shot them with his revolver. Moreover, Cukurs was directly responsible for the execution of over 1,200 Jewish civilians, including infants, who were forced to stand at the edge of a lake, where they were shot and fell into the water. In one particularly harrowing incident, when an old Jewish woman begged for her daughter to stay with her as they were being loaded onto a truck, Cukurs silenced her by shooting her with his pistol. On another occasion, he coldly shot a child who was crying because it could not find its mother in the chaos. His brutality extended to kidnapping and raping Jewish girls and young women at the Arajs Kommando headquarters. Herberts Cukurs played a central and leading role in the atrocities committed in the Riga Ghetto, particularly during the Rumbula massacre in late 1941. The Riga Ghetto was established by Nazi forces in October 1941, shortly after their occupation of Latvia. Located in the city's poor and densely populated Moscow district, the ghetto became a holding area for thousands of Latvian Jews, who were forcibly relocated from their homes. The conditions within the ghetto were horrific. Overcrowding, starvation, and disease were rampant, with little to no access to basic necessities. The ghetto was surrounded by barbed wire and heavily guarded, isolating its inhabitants from the rest of the city. The Rumbula massacre, which occurred on the 30th of November and 8th of December 1941, marked one of the most brutal episodes in the history of the Holocaust in Latvia. As part of the Nazis' final solution, around 25,000 Jews from the Riga Ghetto were rounded up, forced to march several kilometers to the Rumbula forest, and systematically executed. The victims were made to undress and lie face down in large pits, where they were then shot by firing squads. The entire process was carried out with chilling efficiency over the course of just 2 days. This massacre was meticulously organized by Nazi officials with the help of local collaborators. After the war, surviving witnesses reported that Cukurs had been present during the ghetto clearance, beating and shooting men, women and children who could not keep pace on the death march to Rumbula. Cukurs also gave execution orders to his commanders in the Rumbula forest, and multiple eyewitnesses said that they saw Cukurs snatching infants from the arms of their mothers and shooting them. For his brutal role in the atrocities committed against the Jewish population of Latvia's capital, Herberts Cukurs earned the notorious nickname the Hangman of Riga. When the Red Army liberated Latvia in the autumn of 1944, Cukurs fled to Germany with the retreating German forces. After the war, he managed to escape to Brazil using the Rat Lines, a network that helped Nazis flee Europe. Unlike many other war criminals who concealed their identities, Cukurs arrived in Brazil under his real name. He quickly began to seek out members of the local Jewish community, portraying himself as a political exile who had been targeted by the communists and falsely claimed to have rescued Jews during the Holocaust. He even gave an interview to Brazil's most popular magazine, which presented him as the epitome of humanity. In Sao Paulo, Cukurs established a successful business offering scenic flights, but his past soon began to catch up with him. As Holocaust survivors in Europe started to expose the full extent of his crimes, the Confederation of Jewish Communities of Rio de Janeiro demanded that the authorities bring Cukurs to justice. Even the Soviet Union, which lacked direct diplomatic relations with Brazil, sought his extradition through the Polish embassy. However, due to the indifference of local authorities, these requests were not fulfilled. When it became clear that Cukurs would not face trial for his participation in the Holocaust, Nazi hunting agents from Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, tracked him down. Mossad agent Yakov Meidad, a German-born Jew whose parents had perished in the death camps, pretended to be a potential business partner and contacted Cukurs from Montevideo in Uruguay. He invited him to a house in a remote suburb of the city. On the 23rd of February 1965, Cukurs arrived at the location, where a team of Mossad agents were waiting for him. When Cukurs entered the house, the Mossad agents attempted to apprehend him. However, Cukurs fought back fiercely, even biting one of the agent's fingers so hard that it was nearly severed. Despite his resistance, however, he was eventually overwhelmed after one of the men struck him in the head with a hammer. Now helpless, the 64-year-old Cukurs began to plead for his life, asking to speak before they did anything else. However, his pleas went unanswered, and he was promptly shot twice in the head, ending his life. His body was stuffed into a trunk and several weeks later was discovered by local authorities in the same house where he was murdered. Alongside the corpse, the authorities found several documents pertaining to his involvement in the murder of Jews in the Riga Ghetto, and a note left by the Mossad agents, which concluded with the words, "Accused was executed by those who can never forget." In the aftermath of the assassination, Israeli journalist Gad Shimron and one of the Mossad agents who killed Cukurs authored a book on the experience, titled The Execution of the Hangman of Riga. In it, they refer to Cukurs as the Butcher of Latvia. During the 3 years of Nazi occupation of Latvia, around 70,000 Jews were murdered, approximately 3/4 of the pre-war total of 95,000. Riga, once a vibrant cultural center with a Jewish community comprising more than 10% of the city's population, was devastated, and almost all of Riga's Jews had been murdered by the Nazis. After the war, the Jewish community in Latvia was nearly obliterated. The few survivors, many of whom had been hidden by sympathetic locals or who had fled to the Soviet Union, returned to find their homes and businesses destroyed or occupied by others. The once thriving Jewish culture in Latvia had been decimated, with synagogues and community centers left in ruins. Between 1944 and 1966, 352 members of the Arajs Kommando were prosecuted, including its leader, Viktor Arajs. However, many of the lower-ranking members lived out their lives without facing any legal consequences for their actions. While many perpetrators escaped justice, Holocaust survivors can find some solace in knowing that the Butcher of Latvia ultimately paid the highest price for the murder of 30,000 innocent Jewish men, women, and children. There were no tears shed for Herberts Cukurs.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.